So let's begin with what Sri Mulyani just said. Maybe we can start down here with, or PermataBank. Let's start here, and then we'll move down to home credit. We have Meliza Musa Rusli, President and Director of PermataBank. Thank you very much for joining us, and also Pak Animesh Narang, CEO of Home Credit Indonesia. Thanks for joining us on this stage. So, was there something that stood out to you on the outlook for the Indonesian economy from Sri Mulyani?
Yeah. So, I'm quite excited with the closing remark from Ibu Sri Mulyani that we need to improve our investment climate and we should put more investment into Indonesia. And that is the role of the Indonesian banks, that we are ready to support the investment into the country because now the banking sector is much more in a better position. We are more resilient to face with this uncertainty of the global economy as well as the slowdown in the certain sectors in Indonesia. And I think this is also the time for the Indonesian company to invest more into the domestic economy, as well as to invite the foreign companies to come to Indonesia, especially to selected sectors that we know that will further improve our economy. The first one is F&B, second one in telco sectors, and third one in the downstream of the mining business. So it's a little bit too loud. So I hope that my colleagues also who are here from the Indonesian banks, we are actually ready to support the economy, to support the Indonesian companies, to support as well the support from the regulators for us to work together with the other banks in ASEAN, especially with the initiative from Bank Indonesia. We support this the interoperability between countries in ASEAN on the payment system as well as the other digital initiatives that already been in place.
How do you see the M&A environment here in Indonesia right now? It helps that there's a strong economy, but there are global headwinds, as we just talked about. In fact, your bank was bought by Bangkok Bank in 2020 during the pandemic, and I believe now, I guess you can start realizing those synergies.
Yes. So the trend of M&A is actually not slowing down. It's even now Indonesia is become the center of this investment hub. We've seen that many of your colleagues from the Fintech sectors also looking at Indonesia as the main source of growth in the coming years, especially in the context of the ASEAN countries. And I'm actually wanted to hear more from my colleague in here from
Oh, I'm getting to him. I'm getting to him.
Yeah, but again, we have a lot of factors to attract the investment as well as the acquisition. But again, for us, we need to have a stronger economy driven by the local players. So the acquisition by Bangkok Bank CA for Permata is actually to improve more, to make the Indonesian banking sector even more stronger with the support of the regional banks like Bangkok Bank.
Animesh, what do you take away from Sri Mulyani's speech and the outlook for the Indonesian economy as it reflects on your business?
I think the policy outlook is very much in line with what we see on the ground. Right? So we are covering about 200 cities in Indonesia, right? And our customer base, which is about 6 million, represents all socioeconomic segments. And they are generally cautiously optimistic about their future, right? They are cautious because of increasing pricing of energy and food, but they're optimistic because they see incomes recover, right? They see financial products available to them, which allows them to start building additional lines of revenue. For example, Indonesia is a highly entrepreneurial society. So through productive financing that Fintech and companies like us offer, they are now adding to the income that they were generating, so which gives them optimism as well, right? So from a policy level and the basic assumptions that are there for the planning of Indonesia is very much in line with what we see on the ground. So I think there's good alignment there.
If there are storm clouds gathering, how do you best mitigate the risk? And this is a kind of a question to both of you. And I know the Indonesian banking sector and the Indonesian populace, it's only about 50% banked. 50% or thereabouts of Indonesians have bank accounts. So you provide a service of somewhat minor or micro loans to a sector of the economy that can't get bank loans. How do you mitigate the risks if the economy does turn sour?
So I think first, we got 25 years of experience of doing it, right? As a global entity, starting in Central Europe, we've been in emerging economies for the last 20 odd years, right? All the big ones, China, India, Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam, we are present there. So we have deep experience in dealing with credit cycles, economic cycles, and how to run a business in these challenging environments. It's part of our DNA, it's part of our culture. Second, as an institution, we have strong processes and risk controls to make sure that it doesn't become an institutional problem. Third, we are using what we call non-traditional sources of data, right? So when we're trying to evaluate customers who don't have regular income streams or are daily wage workers, how do you evaluate the creditworthiness?
How do you do that?
Well, that's kind of our secret sauce, right? So
they want to know.
No. But I think that's the expertise we have built, right? And that's what allowed us to scale up our business in Indonesia and gives us comfort that we want to keep growing our business. We are going to grow about 30% this year over last year. We are planning about 50% growth next year. We are comfortable with these numbers largely because of the fact that we believe that even in these challenging circumstances, we have the processes, the technology, and generally the environment for growth.
Well, Meliza, what's your secret sauce as far as mitigating risks and incorporating fintech to help mitigate those risks?
Yeah, so for us, I think we have, in general, Indonesian banks, we have quite strong prudent banking, risk management, as well as strong good governance to improve also our process to be able to tap this segment of the fintech that also targeting. I think most importantly in here is that if we are looking at the Indonesian bank industry, our capital adequacy ratio is very strong. Right now at the level of 24% on average. I mean, Permata is one of the highest at 33%. So
this is the capital adequacy ratio.
That's right.
CAR,
yeah, for CAR. And also in looking at the liquidity right now, we are still okay, and the industry is about close to 85%. And also it shows that we are ready to actually distribute more of our to loan to certain sectors, and to tap for these the untapped bankable also underbanked. We are actually working very closely with players like fintech as well as the non-bank financial institutions to be able to increase not only from the financial inclusion, but also to improve our own process. Because we also get a lot of data from working with the fintech, for example, to improve our credit scoring as well as the analysis of the customer behaviors. So actually, in fact, in the past 2 years, I've been working very closely with Home Credit to channel the loan to certain segment, especially to the small micro segment. And this is the area that for banks like Permata, we only have close to 300 branches around Indonesia. We need extended distribution channel to be able to tap this segment, and working together with fintech is one of the solutions for us.
Do you find, and I'm not the expert on the regulatory environment in Indonesia, and this maybe is a question to both of you, is the regulatory environment, I mean, the whole world is dealing with regulating fintech, and in China, I know that, which I cover extensively, it's the platform economy that moved into fintech, and then there was heavy regulation to kind of take the micro lending out of the platforms because they had so many users. Do you find the regulatory environment, I know there's probably government officials in the audience here, but just give me your unvarnished view on the regulatory environment as far as adopting new fintech ways of doing business.
The OJK, I think, learned from the Chinese experience, right? The OJK officials OJK is a fantastic regulator, right? And they've been looking at experiences from China and broader trends, and they were ahead of a lot of the markets to regulate fintech. So there are clear regulations that were placed earlier on, and they were updated recently. So they've made sure that there's a clear policy and regulatory framework, which is making sure that the excesses of fintech, which happen in countries like China, are not repeated in Indonesia. Generally, there's a new board of commissioners that have been put in place by the parliament, I think July of this year, and we'll see how they want to take it forward. But again, we believe, knowing the history of the OJK, and they're always finding the right balance between stimulating growth because they recognize the need for institutions like ours to drive financial inclusion and also to have the right framework so that it doesn't become a systemic risk for the economy and the country. So, and they've done a fantastic job during COVID times. If you look at, I think they were among the best regulators during COVID times.
Well, in Indonesia, obviously, it's an archipelago that stretches so many miles and across so many different islands. How do you see that preventing or encouraging the adoption of digital payments and digital lending?
You know, we see opportunity outside of Java, right? I think I look at Indonesia as two parts. Like we have Jakarta, Banten, and West Java as one area, and the rest of Indonesia, right? And the first area is heavily penetrated by credit. Like in Jakarta, in DKI Jakarta, 30% of people have credit, which is to me too high, right? I think 30% of the per capita population of Jakarta have credit, while you go to Sulawesi, it could be less than 1%. Right? Now, that's not a regulatory issue. It's simply a distribution challenge, right? I think how financial institutions have approached the business, the concentration of people living in Jakarta, living in West Java and Banten makes it easier to build a business out, and it's just tougher to build a business out in Sulawesi, right? But companies like ours, that's what we specialize in, right? Going to the areas where it's tougher to do business, to be more efficient, and that's what we're doing there.
Here's a good question from the audience. Thanks for participating. How far away are we from seamless intra-ASEAN banking? We talked about it at the end there with Sri Mulyani about how ASEAN nations, including the Philippines, Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia, looking at a deal to create kind of QR code payments cross-border and maybe lessen the reliance on trade settlement and settlement in US dollars.
Yeah, actually now is the time for us to work even more closely with the ASEAN banking sectors, especially, I mean, with all the initiative from our regulator from Bank Indonesia. Recently, we've seen there's some same-day local currency settlement. This is between Indonesia and Thailand, which we just launched actually a month ago. That's proof that actually the stronger we actually work together within this ASEAN, especially from the regulators' perspective, that will have an impact to how the banks in ASEAN can actually operate very seamlessly in terms of from the payment perspective as well as the settlement.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're getting more questions. This is great. Private market seems to be the only safe haven this year. Forecast for 2023. Yeah, I mean, how is your business going to be looking going forward? Rising interest rates is a good for a bank. Net interest margins improve, but then risk profiles...
Well, I have to challenge you on that
Okay,
part.
please.
So I think we've seen that there's an expectation, right? There's an expansion of NIM for banks, given the increasing of this interest rate. But again, there's a lagging in terms of how we can adjust our lending rates. And of course, from our customer, they would like to have their deposit rates to be increased much faster than how we can improve our lending rates. And again, because Indonesian Bank, we want to support the economy. We are playing our role as the financial intermediary, right? So we have to maybe improve a little bit from the NIM perspective. But again, Indonesian banks, as you know, that we are all in healthy conditions to be able to face this uncertainty in the coming year. And the question about whether this NIM would continue to be a major issue for banks, I think it depends on how we see the sustainability of our profitability going forward. I think it's important for banks to increase the confidence level of the customers, to have a sound and robust risk management as well as profitability.
Right. Animesh, what's your risk appetite right now, given the headwinds?
You know, we monitor risk very closely, right? Again, because we are targeting customers all over Indonesia at all socioeconomic segments, we have a good feeling for what's happening in the market. At the moment, we don't see any stress that's bothering us. Generally, as a business, we are very quick to respond. We have processes, like we saw that in COVID, overnight we could rebuild our business processes in changing situations. At this point of time, we are cautiously optimistic.
What's your biggest challenge, though?
Talent, most probably.
Talent?
Yeah,
That's a global
digital
problem.
Talent.
Yeah, talent.
I think digital talents is a common issue for not only for fintech but also
Everyone.
in banking.
So how do you develop this? This is a long-term process if you grow it organically.
Yeah.
Or you do like Singapore and Hong Kong are trying to do is give incentives, and Thailand and others trying to get bankers or innovators, fintech people to come to theirs. Is Indonesia on that same competitive path to attract talent or grow talent?
Indonesia is focusing much on growing talent locally, which I believe is a long-term process, but more sustainable. We as a business have been investing quite a lot in people development, right? So we have academies. For example, people are surprised to know that we do our entire data science team sits in Indonesia. It's fully Indonesian. So we have groomed about 15 people. Please don't hire them. From the ground up.
Wait until then.
To do advanced complex modeling, right, on terabytes of data sets, right? So we are building this expertise. We have our entire mobile app, which has 12 million people, developed in Indonesia.
Are you leveraging that data that you have well enough? I remember, and I don't mean to name drop here, but when I talked to Jack Ma about 5-6 years ago, he was saying data is the new oil in the world. Everyone's going to be fighting for the data. Are both of your businesses, you're a more traditional lender and a more micro lender. Is data being harnessed enough?
Yes, that's actually very important. Customer data for us is very key, especially, as you said, right, as a traditional lenders, we don't have enough data. That's actually the reason why we actually work very closely with digital companies to be able to enrich the customer database that we have over years, enrich with the customer behaviors, enrich also with the way they spend their money outside banking sectors. I think that's very important of the collaboration that we have between banking sectors and also the non-bank.
That must be part of your secret sauce.
It is. Like, I'll give you some statistics, right? Like, when we started business in Indonesia, we are evaluating 40 attributes about a customer. 40. Today, we are able to evaluate over 2,000, right? So just to tell you, over the 9 years, how the journey of information has changed in our business, right? Now, I agree that data is the new gold, but you have to be super careful, or the new oil. You have to be super careful with it, right? There are privacy concerns, there are data protection regulations that need to be very cognizant about, because while you have this data, there's a huge responsibility that comes along with that data, which we're very cognizant about as an organization. But ultimately, this data is giving you huge insights about what's happening, right, in the business. And it allows to react and adjust to the business as the customer needs, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's super important.
Yeah, and that's also important actually for the banks to improve our credit risk assessment as well.
Yeah.
Because right now we rely on, say, financial analysis from their financial from the customers. But with this additional insight, working with the data scoring company, with Fintech, that will improve in terms of our risk assessment, and it will improve also the credit quality of the bank.
Well, we have about a minute left. I always want to give you an opportunity to say some of the things that you maybe came prepared to say, but I didn't ask. Is there anything else you'd like to add? And if not, maybe just give your outlook for your business for 2023.
Yes, I think I start with the Indonesian banks. We've seen that the consumer confidence is still strong in Indonesia. And thankfully to the accommodative monetary policy as well by the regulator, there will be some incentive in 2023, especially to support the spending on the consumer loan in property as well as automotive. I think we will see that that will drive the consumer loan growth in 2023.
You think there's going to be more consumer loan growth, even though rates are higher and there's stresses?
We believe that after this pandemic, because of not after, but during this pandemic, we've seen that actually the growth of the consumer loan is still faster than the other part of the segment.
Pent-up demand?
Most likely because of also the optimism, right, of the economy itself.
Final words?
I think we are fully focused on financial inclusion. We are fully focused on digital literacy, digital awareness, digital inclusion, and we are fully focused on ESG. And these are the big 3 themes for next year.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause to our wonderful panelists. Meliza Musa Rusli, President Director of PermataBank, and Animesh Narang, CEO of Household Credit Indonesia. Thank you so much.
Thank
Terima
you.
kasih. Thank you.
Thank you, Aminesh. Thank you.